君の中にある赤と青き線それらが結ばれるのは真の像
The story of Malaysia's rainforest is one of stark contrast. These once vibrant ecosystems are increasingly overshadowed by scenes of industrial activity. Logging operations, palm oil plantations, and urban development carve through the land, leaving a trail of destruction.
For the indigenous community of the Malaysia, the forest is more than a source of sustenance. It is the constituent of their cultural heritage. Their knowledge of the land, passed down through generations, is an invaluable treasure that is now at risk.
Deforestation has several socio-economic and cultural impacts on indigenous communities. As their ancestors' lands are cleared for logging and plantations, many are forced to leave their homes. This displacement leads to the loss of traditional livelihoods and the erosion of cultural practices that have sustained them for centuries.
The rate of deforestation in Pahang, Malaysia has increased to an alarming degree, posing serious threats to the state, local inhabitants, ecosystem, equilibrium and species richness. An astounding diversity of plant and animal species, many of which are exclusive to Pahang, are supported by the thick and plentiful foliage in the region's woodlands. There are major ramifications for the ecosystem stability and adaptability as a result of the disintegration of the integrated web of life that formerly thrived in these woodlands. There are also four main causes of deforestation which can have an impact on Pahang indigenous populations.
The first issue is legal and illicit logging. The biodiversity and indigenous inhabitants of Pahang, Malaysia are severely harmed by the logging industry, whether it is conducted legitimately or not. The region verdant forest home to critically endangered species like the Sumatran rhinoceros and Malayan tiger are degrading due to habitat loss, which have a negative impact on ecosystem and biodiversity. This problem is made worse by illegal logging, which can mostly take place in protected areas and indiscriminately chop down trees, thereby undermining conservation effort. The economic and cultural tradition of indigenous groups like the Orang Asli are seriously disrupted by logging. For many years, the Semai and Temia tribe have relied on wood for religious ritual, medical treatments and food. Stricter logging regulation, acknowledgement of indigenous land rights, and sustainable forest management techniques are required in this context. Entire conservation policy are required to safeguard natural heritage and advance the welfare of the indigenous people.
Next, development of agriculture. Both indigenous tribe and biodiversity are greatly impacted by Pahang growing agriculture sector, which is mostly focused on the development of palm oil plantation. Deforestation for agricultural purposes damages ecosystems severely and displaces species by generating significant habitat destruction and fragmentation. For example, the conversion of the Lepah Hile Forest Reserve into plantations producing palm oil has resulted in a substantial reduction of the natural habitats that are home to animals like the Asian elephant and the Malayan tapir. Agriculture expansions usually pushes into native territories, uprooting communities and denying them access to their ancestral lands. This invasion causes one's sense of self to be undermined and makes them more vulnerable to financial difficulties.
Furthermore, building of infrastructure, construction of roads and dams is one major form of infrastructure development that has an impact on Pahang's indigenous inhabitants and biodiversity. The construction of the Central Spine Road and other infrastructure projects have caused habitat loss and fragmentation in forested areas. This has made it harder for animals to migrate and put the existence of some species like the Asian elephant and Malayan tiger in jeopardy. infrastructure developments cause indigenous communities like the Orang Asli to be forcibly displaced and to lose access to natural resources. For instance, the construction of the Kelau Dam resulted in the relocation of numerous Orang Asli households, upsetting their customs and traditional means of subsistence.
And the last one is mining activities. The mining activities in Pahang, particularly the swift growth of bauxite mining, have a substantial and negative impact on the native population as well as biodiversity. Significant habitat degradation and water source contamination result from the massive deforestation required for mining operation, which seriously endanger biodiversity. The mining of bauxite in Kuantan caused significant environmental degradation, contaminating rivers and harming aquatic life. Forcible displacement and water source pollution affect indigenous communities such as the Orang Asli, which depend on these sources for daily sustenance and farming activities. Their traditional of life is being further undermined by the destruction of land that is significant to them spiritually and culturally.
Each issue problem can be outcome with a variety of solution or recommendation. So here are recommendations for each issue that have been explained before.
Strengthen protection measure. More severe penalties for unlawful logging and land destruction must be added to current legislation, such as the National Forestry Act 1984 in order to strengthen the legal framework safeguarding Malaysia forest ecosystem. All forest types including the sometime indoor peat bogs and mangrove, which are essential for biodiversity and carbon storage, should be fully covered by these changes. For example, the habitats of endangered species like the ASEAN elephant and Malayan tiger can be protected by stiffening the penalty for illicit operation in the Belum Temenggor Forest Complex. In addition to following domestic law, Malaysia is required to carry with international environmental accord, including the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Convention on Biological Diversity. Malaysia can support indigenous people's right to self-determination, cultural integrity and traditional practices while promoting sustainable resource management techniques that benefit indigenous community and Pahang biodiversity conservation by allowing indigenous people to own and control their ancestral land.
Recognize indigenous land rights. The government and other pertinent parties must recognize the legal land rights of indigenous groups in order to address this issue. This means granting them formal ownership and custodianship of their lands, preserving their rights to use and manage these spaces in line with their custom and cultural heritage. Ensuring that indigenous communities participate fully in decision-making processes is crucial. Engaging in land management and conservation initiatives can lead to the application of more effective and culturally appropriate methods. Indigenous knowledge systems offer distinct insights into preservation of biodiversity and sustainable land use, having evolved over an extended period of time.
The promotion of sustainable forestry and agriculture practices is vital in mitigating the adverse effect of deforestation of Pahang indigenous inhabitants and biodiversity. The term sustainable forestry describes the management of forests so as meet the current requirement without jeopardizing the ability of future generations to meet their own. This includes methods like selective logging, which only take down particular trees, allowing the forest to regenerate and preserve its natural equilibrium. Such tactics aid in preserving the many species that depend on forest habitat in Pahang, where the biodiversity is jeopardized.
Lastly, restore degraded ecosystem. Restoring damaged ecosystem and guaranteeing biodiversity conservation require funding for replanting and restoration projects. To mitigate the effect of deforestation and maintain the unique biodiversity of Pahang State, it is imperative to invest in reforestation and restoration activities. Large-scale tree planting campaigns similar to the 1 million trees effort have the potential to improve forest cover and restore degraded areas. Collaboration among NGOs, local communities and the state government of Pahang has the potential to repeat the success of such initiative in other parts of Malaysia.
Everything that happens in our daily life teach us something to think about whether all the things that we can do can give the benefits to ourselves or everyone. So let's figure out the lesson learned for our 10 minutes journey.
The first one is importance of indigenous knowledge. Indigenous people have a thorough understanding of local ecosystem, including the intricate relationship that exists between species and their surroundings. Determining how deforestation impacts biodiversity, especially the extinction of plant, animal species that are essential to preserving ecological balance, can be greatly aided by the information provided. Understanding indigenous knowledge is necessary to understand the social and cultural effects of deforestation on indigenous populations. Native Americans usually rely on the forest for their everyday necessities, custom and overall health. Deforestation upends their traditional ways of life, causing them to lose their means of subsistence and cultural heritage.
Interconnectedness of biodiversity and culture. The rainforests of Pahang are more than just an assortment of plants and animals. They are a living tapestry interwoven with the strands of local culture. The complex relationship that exists between biodiversity and cultural well-being is a valuable lesson that may be drawn from the state of Malaysia's continuous fight against deforestation. The jungles of Pahang are teeming with life. This ecosystem supports an astounding range of animals, as evidenced by the booming calls of gibbons resonating through the thick canopy and the brilliant butterflies fluttering among the undergrowth. We may move toward a future where biodiversity and culture coexist peacefully by realizing how intertwined they are. Preserving Pahang's rainforest is important more than simply protecting threatened species. It's also about maintaining the Orang Asli people's unique cultural legacy and way of life.
Legal framework and enforcement must be strengthened. Stronger legal framework and enforcement are urgently needed, as seen by the rising deforestation and resource exploitation in Pahang. Deficient environmental regulation and inadequate implementation encourage uncontrolled logging, agricultural expansion, infrastructure development and mining operation, leading to significant biodiversity loss and destruction of native communities. Enforcing strict legal measures will be guarantee indigenous community rights, promote the adoption of sustainable land practices, and effectively protect forests, all of which are essential preserving their traditional way of life and cultural legacy. Pahang must implement strict environmental regulation in order to achieve sustainable development, protect the region's natural resources, and protect its indigenous peoples.
Sustainability and economic incentive. The need for sustainable alternative and incentive is emphasized by the economic dynamic driving deforestation in Pahang. Through industry like mining, forestry and agriculture, community and businesses commonly seek short-term gains at the expense of the environment. One way to lessen this demand is to provide financial incentive for the adoption of sustainable practices. In the large forests of Pahang, for example, promoting ecotourism can increase revenue while also protecting biodiversity. For Pahang ecosystem to be preserved sustainably and for the benefit of its people, it is imperative that economic growth align with the environmental goals.
As we draw our journey to a close, we reflect on the stark contrast that define Malaysia's rainforest today. On one side, the pristine beauty of untouched nature, a testament to the incredible biodiversity and rich cultural heritage that these forests support. On the other, the relentless advance of deforestation threatens to erase this natural splendor forever.
The story of nature rainforest is a story of resilience and hope. It is a call to action for each of us to recognize our role in preserving this invaluable heritage. The efforts of indigenous communities, environmental activists, and concerned citizens around the world inspire us to believe that change is possible.
The urgency of this mission cannot be overstated. Our planet has our climate stability, and the future of countless species and cultures depend on the choices we make today. By protecting Malaysia's rainforest, we are safeguarding a vital legacy for future generations.
Let us rise to the challenge and commit to action that nurture and restore our nature world. Together we can ensure that these rainforests continue to thrive, offering their gift of beauty, life and heritage to all who come after us.
Assalamualaikum and thank you for watching our documentary video.
And remember, say no to deforestation
And protect indigenous.
and see you again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.